The Bible says Jesus died and rose again, but this ancient book says he broke into hell first to set Adam and Eve free. You've heard the story 100 times. Jesus died on the cross. He was buried, and 3 days later, he rose again. But what if I told you there's more to that story? There's a lost gospel. One early Christians didn't just read, they revered. It's called the Gospel of Nicodemus, also known as the Acts of Pilate. And unlike the versions you hear in church today, this one tells us what Jesus was doing between the cross and the resurrection. He didn't rest. He didn't sleep. According to this ancient text, he broke into hell. And what he did down there changes everything. Because this isn't a parable. It's not symbolic. This was once considered sacred, a record of what happened when the Son of God broke into Hades and set the first humans free. Let's start with what this book actually is. The Gospel of Nicodemus, also known as the Acts of Pilate, is an ancient Christian writing that didn't make it into the Bible, but for centuries, it was taken seriously by believers. Some churches even used it in their readings before the official canon was finalized. It's thought to have been written down around the 4th century, but the stories inside are much older, passed down by early Christians who believed they revealed what happened between the crucifixion and the resurrection. It's divided into 2 parts. Part 1, the trial of Jesus before Pilate. It gives more detail than what we see in the Gospels, and even includes testimonies from witnesses who say Jesus performed miracles. Part 2, the part that really matters for this story. It's called the Harrowing of Hell. Now let's break that down. Harrowing means to tear through or to plunder, and that's exactly what this section claims Jesus did. Because according to this gospel, Jesus didn't just lie in the tomb after he died. He descended into Hades. Wait, what is Hades? Now before we go any further, let's make this clear. Hades is not the same as the fiery hell we often picture today. In ancient Jewish and early Christian belief, Hades, or Sheol in Hebrew, was the realm of the dead. It was a waiting place, a shadowy underworld where souls went after death. Not just the wicked, everyone. The righteous, the prophets, even Adam and Eve, they were believed to be there, waiting in a kind of spiritual limbo because sin had not yet been defeated. There was no access to heaven until the Messiah fulfilled his mission. And that's where the story changes everything. Because the Gospel of Nicodemus says that while Jesus' body lay in the tomb, his spirit stormed the gates of Hades. He didn't go quietly. He didn't just show up to talk. He came to break the chains, to shake the underworld, to reach the souls trapped in darkness and bring them home. And according to this book, the first voices to greet him were the souls of the prophets and patriarchs, the men and women who had waited for this moment since the beginning of time. So what happens next? What does Jesus say? Who does he meet? And how do Adam and Eve fit into it? We're about to step into the most powerful and buried part of the story. The moment when hell heard footsteps. Before Jesus descended, Hades wasn't just a myth. It was a reality that even the holiest souls had to face. In the ancient world, Hades, or Sheol, wasn't a place of fire and pitchforks. It was a kingdom of silence, a realm of shadows, deep beneath the earth, where the souls of the dead were held, and it wasn't peaceful. According to the Gospel of Nicodemus, Hades was ruled by 2 beings, Satan, the tempter, who gloated over the fall of mankind, and Prince Hades, the keeper of the underworld, who locked the gates so that no soul could escape. This realm was divided. The wicked suffered, the righteous waited, but no one got out. Imagine it. In one chamber, the souls of murderers and tyrants screamed in torment. In another, the righteous Adam, Eve, Abraham, David, the prophets, sat in sorrow, not because they were condemned, but because they were cut off from God's presence. They had run the race, but the door to paradise was still shut, because salvation hadn't yet come. There were no keys, no escape, no victory, just waiting. And then, one day, in the silence of that vast underworld, a crack appears, not a sound, a shaking, a tremor through the walls of death itself, and the souls begin to whisper, "Something's coming. Someone is coming." The prophets rise, the demons tremble, because Hades, which has held the world in chains since Eden, is about to be broken into, and that's where the real story begins. Okay, let's talk about what hell actually looked like before Jesus. Because in the Gospel of Nicodemus, it's not the fiery torture chamber you've seen in movies. It's something older, deeper, and honestly, more tragic. It's called Hades, the shadowy realm of the dead. And in this story, everyone went there. Not just the wicked, even the righteous, even the ones we look up to: Adam, Eve, Abraham, David, Isaiah. They were all trapped in the same place, waiting.
And all the just were shut up in Hades.
See, back then, there was no heaven access. No one could enter paradise, not yet. Not until something, or someone, opened the door. The souls of the righteous weren't screaming. They were sighing.
We sit in darkness and in the shadow of death.
They knew they had served God, but they couldn't yet see him. Imagine Abraham, the father of faith, sitting in that silence. Imagine David, the man after God's heart, replaying the Psalms in his mind while he waited. And now picture this, all of them waiting for centuries, because redemption hadn't happened yet. And suddenly, the spirits start to rise. They look at each other, and a whisper moves through the darkness.
Lift up your gates, O princes, and be ye lifted up, ye everlasting gates, and the King of glory shall come in.
That's right. Someone was coming, and not just anyone. The King of glory, the one who held the keys. And suddenly, the rulers of the underworld, Satan and Prince Hades, start to panic. At first, Satan thinks he's being clever. He tells Hades,
"There's this man named Jesus. He calls himself the Son of God. But I handled it. He's dead now, crucified, buried, just like the rest of them."
But Hades doesn't look relieved. In fact, he looks terrified. He says,
"If he's the same one who raised Lazarus from the dead, I want nothing to do with him."
Then a voice splits the silence. A royal declaration that shakes the very gates of death.
Lift up your gates, O princes, and be lifted up, you everlasting gates, and the King of glory shall come in.
The demons tremble. Hades groans. And Satan? Satan is furious. He screams,
"Who is this King of glory?"
And the voice thunders back,
The Lord strong and mighty, the Lord mighty in battle.
Jesus didn't enter Hades with chains. He came with authority, not as a victim of death, but as its destroyer. He didn't knock, he didn't ask. He shattered the gates, and the darkness that had ruled for generations, it collapsed. Souls that had been bound for centuries finally saw light. The demons fled. Hades itself, the mighty underworld, crumbled under the weight of glory, because the king had arrived, and death had just been defeated. This is the moment hell breaks wide open. After Jesus storms in, the entire underworld, this place that held every soul since the beginning, is in shock. The gates are broken, Satan is defeated. And then Jesus starts calling names. He doesn't just show up for a victory lap. He's here on a mission. And the first thing he says,
Adam, arise, thou and all thy sons, the righteous.
can you imagine that? Adam, the one who started it all, lifting his head in the shadows and realizing it's finally over. Then Jesus calls.
Come forth, O righteous man, come forth, O prophet.
One by one, the names echo through the pit. Eve, Isaiah, Abraham, David. All of them had been waiting. They weren't in torment. They were in limbo, in what some call Abraham's bosom. Safe, but stuck. Righteous, but still waiting on someone to open the door. And now that someone, the Son of God himself, just blew the door off the hinges. The text says,
And the Lord, stretching forth his hand, made the sign of the cross upon Adam and upon all his saints. And he took the right hand of Adam and went up out of hell.
that's not just rescue, that's a jailbreak. He doesn't just lift them, he leads them out. This wasn't some symbolic moment. According to this apocryphal gospel, it was a real exodus, a procession of the righteous, rising up from the underworld in full view of all creation. And here's the twist. Remember when Jesus told the thief on the cross,
Today you will be with me in paradise.
in Luke chapter 23, verse 43. This is where some versions of the Gospel of Nicodemus say he actually took them into paradise itself, not just released from hell, but welcomed home. It's one of the most powerful images in early Christian texts. Jesus holding Adam by the hand, followed by Eve, the prophets, the righteous, walking into light as hell collapses behind them. Here's the wild part. This wasn't some fringe tale in the back of a dusty scroll. For centuries, early Christians celebrated this story. In the Eastern churches, it was a core part of the faith. They didn't just read it, they preached it in sermons, painted it in icons, even acted it out during Easter week like a holy drama. Jesus breaking into Hades, it was seen as the ultimate mic drop moment of redemption. But then, something shifted. The Western church started getting uncomfortable. This story was too mystical, too strange, too big. It didn't fit neatly into a black and white theology of, you die, you go to heaven or hell. The idea that righteous people were trapped in the underworld waiting to be rescued, that Jesus descended into the depths before he ascended into glory, it complicated things. And you know what the church tends to do with complicated things? They simplify, quietly. Over time, the Gospel of Nicodemus got labeled non-canonical. It was pushed aside, removed from mainstream doctrine, and slowly faded from the pulpit. Even though it was once the most widely known story of what Jesus did between the cross and the resurrection, it became the part no one talks about anymore. Today, most people have no idea this story even exists. The harrowing of hell, the most epic jailbreak in history, was buried, not because it wasn't powerful, but because it was too powerful, too mysterious, too disruptive. So it got erased, and yet it never really disappeared, because the Gospel of Nicodemus still survives, hidden in manuscripts, whispered through artwork, waiting, like those righteous souls, to be brought into the light again. Now, maybe you're thinking, okay, that's what the Gospel of Nicodemus says, but does the actual Bible back any of this up? Here's where it gets interesting. It doesn't shout it, but it whispers it, quietly, powerfully, just enough to make you lean in. First, Peter 3:19 says,
He went and preached to the spirits in prison.
Wait, what? Who are these spirits in prison? Why is Jesus preaching to them? This line has puzzled scholars for centuries. But when you compare it to Nicodemus, it's like a puzzle piece snapping into place. These are the souls waiting in the realm of the dead. And Jesus shows up to set them free. Next, Ephesians 4, verse 9, says something just as bold.
He also descended first into the lower parts of the earth.
Paul's talking about Jesus here, not ascending, descending, not just into a grave, but into the lower parts, the deep spiritual underworld that early Christians called Hades or Sheol. It's not a metaphor, it's movement. Jesus went down before he went up. And then there's Matthew chapter 27, a verse most people have read but never truly seen.
The tombs broke open. The bodies of many holy people who had died were raised to life and appeared to many people in the holy city.
Hold up. So at the moment of Jesus' death, the graves broke open, and righteous dead people just started walking around? That sounds less like a calm resurrection and more like a spiritual jailbreak. Put it all together, and you start to realize the Gospel of Nicodemus doesn't contradict the Bible. It amplifies what the Bible only hints at. Where Scripture gives us breadcrumbs, Nicodemus lays out the whole feast. It paints the full picture of a Jesus who didn't just rise from the grave. He stormed hell, shattered its gates, and led the captives out by name. And suddenly, that one little line in the Apostles' Creed, he descended into hell, doesn't feel so small anymore. So here's the part that most people miss. Jesus didn't just barely escape death. He stormed the gates of Hades like a king returning to reclaim stolen territory. This wasn't a rescue mission in the shadows. It was a public dismantling of the spiritual forces that held mankind captive for generations. In the Gospel of Nicodemus, it says,
O all-devouring and insatiable Hades, you have been defeated.
Even Satan and Hades themselves are confused and terrified. One says it's just a prophet. The other screams,
No, it's the Son of God.
They realize too late. This wasn't a warning shot. This was war, and Jesus won. He didn't just walk into hell. He shook it to its core. He shattered the gates. He bound the rulers. He emptied the righteous out of their captivity. And when he rose again, he wasn't just alive. He had the keys. Revelation chapter 1, verse 18.
I was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore, and I hold the keys of death and Hades.
He didn't escape the underworld. He conquered it. He owns it now. He made a spectacle of hell right in front of the ones who thought they ruled it. Before the cross became a symbol, before churches were built, before the New Testament was even finished, there was this story. The harrowing of hell wasn't just a mysterious idea buried in forgotten texts. It was once central to the Christian imagination. Why? Because it was the first time the early church got to say out loud, "We win." Not in theory, not someday, but right then, in the underworld itself. In the Eastern Church, this wasn't fringe theology. They painted it on their walls. They sang it in their hymns. They acted it out during Holy Week. Jesus descending into Hades wasn't a side story. It was Act 1 of the resurrection. It showed the early believers that Jesus didn't just defeat death for himself. He dragged everyone else out with him. Adam, Evening, David, the prophets, even the thief on the cross. This was their first victory chant. Before
He is risen.
it was,
He has descended and set the captives free.
that's why early icons and art often showed Jesus not walking alone from the tomb, but grabbing Adam and Eve by the wrists, pulling them up from their graves, because that's what the harrowing of hell symbolized, not just hope for the living, but justice for the dead. And over time, that victory story got quieter. It got edited, and eventually in the West, it got erased, but it was never fiction. To the first Christians, it was everything. If Jesus really descended into Hades, if he really confronted Satan, if he really called Adam and Eve by name and led a jailbreak from the underworld, then this isn't just a lost story. It's a complete shift in how we understand salvation, resurrection, and even the afterlife. Think about it. Most of us grew up hearing that when you die, you go to either heaven or hell. Boom, done. But this gospel, it says that line wasn't always so clear. Even the righteous had to wait. Even the prophets, the ones who walked with God, were trapped until Jesus kicked the doors open. And what does that say about Jesus' mission? It wasn't just to save the future. It was to redeem the past. He didn't just die for us. He went back for them. Adam, evening, David, Isaiah, the saints, the forgotten, the imprisoned. He's not just a savior. He's a rescuer, a breaker of chains. The one who didn't wait for the world to come to him. He went down into the dark to get us. This story changes everything. It means there's no place too far, no soul too buried, no curse too old, that he won't go down to bring you back up. So now you know. There's a book the church buried, a gospel once respected, then rejected, a story of Jesus not resting in the tomb, but rising up and storming the gates of hell. The Gospel of Nicodemus doesn't just give us extra detail, it gives us a deeper Jesus. Not just the Lamb, but the Lion, not just the crucified, but the Conqueror. And maybe that's why it had to be erased, because it didn't fit the clean lines of Sunday school theology, because it dared to show Jesus in the dark places, doing what only he could do, saving the very first sinners. But now, the story is back, and we're unlocking it, page by page, inside the forbidden vault. If you want to read the Gospel of Nicodemus for yourself, along with dozens of other lost and banned texts, subscribe to the vault. You'll get full access to the manuscripts, breakdowns, and the truth they never wanted you to find. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications, because every week we open another sealed scroll, another buried truth, another forgotten part of your faith history. This is the Forbidden Vault, and we're just getting started.